Okay.
Are we live?
We're live.
We are live.
All right, Rob, what's the topic for today?
Okay, so if you were following us on Facebook or Twitter, or Tout, you may have seen that our topic today is focused around books that you should be reading in the first quarter of 2012. The three people that are in front of you right now are huge book nerds, these two especially. So we thought it'd be a little bit fun and necessary to talk about some books that we think that you could benefit from reading from in the next couple months. So that's basically the premise for the show.
I think even more than that, as we were just discussing, that some of these book choices are what we found has helped us or impacted us going into this year, and they might be more personally related, but as you shared with me earlier, one of them, which I had never heard of,
yeah, my books are
I actually might read it and find enough value to where I could apply it into all different areas of my life, not just personally. So these might be books you guys are sharing in particular that helps you personally, not just professionally. Is that the case?
Yeah, to a degree. And I actually have been seeing a little bit of research floating through online, especially on Harvard Business Review recently had an article about how fiction books actually can help your mind and your creativity to the same degree that a nonfiction book or even, a business-specific book might. So I have one fiction book on here. I love reading fiction. I think it's especially important to not dismiss that, and to just treat it as something other than what it could be, which could be hugely impactful for you and for business strategy.
So we're going to spend some time talking about each of the books a little bit, but we're going to have Joe go first because he might have to step out a little bit early. So go for it.
You got it. So 3 books that I like. David Meerman Scott, who finally came out with his updated, revised edition of the New Rules of Marketing and PR. And this is a book that, Jeremy, if I recall, you actually had to read as a requirement of your PR and marketing program in school, in college.
Yep.
At least the first edition.
Yep. Yes, the first one.
So it says here over 250,000 copies in print. You've probably seen, if you're in social media or you use social media, you've seen this book. But I would encourage you to pick up the expanded edition, and here's why. The new edition talks more about mobile marketing and gives you more case studies around the original concepts in the first book than the first one. And it's quite a bit thicker, actually. It's about, I think he's added maybe 75 to 100 pages to this particular edition. And the stuff in terms of the mobile marketing tips in here, I think are valuable alone. So this is kind of the Bible to, I believe, 2012 social media marketing, because he gets it. He understands the concept of how PR now is blurred in with social media, and that social media really isn't something you add to your business. It's part of your business process, and it's just part of how we're going to do things. And the subtitle of the book, How to Use Social Media, Online Video, Mobile Applications, Blogs, New Releases, and Viral Marketing to Reach Buyers, is something every single business owner can benefit from. So this is my basic standard. Everybody should be reading this book if they don't have it in their social media library. A recent book that I read that I actually bought in an airport and then couldn't put down on the airplane is a book called How to Market to People Not Like You. And as a sales strategist, this really caught my attention because I know that when we're talking to different types of clients, we're going to talk to all different types of clients from different types of backgrounds, and different types of races and religion, political views, philosophies in business, your millennials to your baby boomers, and even marketing to women. Of course, that's much different than marketing to men. And there's a whole chapter dedicated to marketing to women. One of my favorite parts of the book is what he calls narrowcasting. So I'll just give you this one principle. He says it's better to reach 10% of what I call your high potential market than to reach 90% of a market that doesn't really care about your company or your products. So this helps you rethink about how important quantity is versus quality. Is if you're just after the numbers, how many fans do I have on Facebook? How many followers do I have on Twitter? How many connections do I have on LinkedIn? You're focused on the wrong thing. You want to narrow your focus on how do I target the people in the audience that's going to mean the most to my business and that I can mean the most for their business. So I love the whole concept of narrowcasting that Kelly McDonald, who wrote the book, spends a lot of time on in this book. It's a recurring theme throughout the book. Lastly, the shocker book for me last year, at the end of last year, that I have committed to putting to use in this year is a book on leadership by Jeffrey Gitomer. It's called The Little Book of Leadership. Jeffrey Gitomer's Little Book of Leadership. And for those people who know Jeffrey Gitomer, he's actually a client of ours. And he is one of the world authorities on sales and sales training. And he's best known for the Little Red Book of Selling and the Sales Bible. So everyone knows him as the sales guy. You perhaps even subscribe to his newsletter, The Sales Caffeine, which we have a column in that runs every week. But he kind of shocked everyone with a book on leadership, and it's quite good. There's actually a lot of really good leadership principles in it. My favorite chapter in the book is a chapter called Resilient Leadership. And he says resilience is about responding and recovering in a way that leads to a positive outcome. And as a startup, having been now 2 years in business, we've had to overcome a lot of different challenges and remain very optimistic, remain very positive, and not just in how we treat each other internally, but how we also work with our clients, our customers, and our wives. You know, our girlfriends, our wives, our family members, and so on. And that's not easy. So the idea of resilient leadership being more about attitude than it is anything else really stuck out to me. The highest compliment I ever received as a manager, I was creating a training program in New York City almost 12 years ago, and the CEO of that company said, "You're one of the more resilient people I know. You keep bouncing back. You're not taking the setbacks to heart, and you're figuring out how to keep that positive and adjust and adapt." We've had to do a lot of adapting in the last 2 years. Would you guys agree?
Yes.
And as a social media firm, you've got to be adaptive. So I love the book. There's a lot of great principles in it. And if you're a leader in business, I think it's one of those, I wouldn't guess that this is a good leadership book to go get. So that's my contribution. How are we doing on time? We're doing good. So I'd like to hear, let's see, Rob's next. I might miss Jeremy's, but let's hear Rob's.
I'll go next. My books are a little out of the ordinary, I think, but the first one on my list, if you've been watching our show over time or you know anything about me, you know how much of a Starbucks fanatic I am, so I put Onward on the top of my list by Howard Schultz, Starbucks CEO and chairman, I think he is. But anyways, I'm currently reading it right now, so I haven't finished it yet, but what I've found is not only is it a great book for entrepreneurs to read, no matter what industry you're in, because he provides a lot of great insight and just experience and stories and emotion into his writing, but it's great for people like me who are, you know, not, I don't own my own business, obviously. I work for One Social Media, so I have a different position than he writes about, but some of the things that I'm reading I can definitely recognize as opportunities and situations that have come up in our company and that I've seen just being in the business world. And so it's a really great book to just read if you enjoy learning about other businesses and how they started. Joe and I actually talk a lot about books like this. I know he's read, you know, books by Zappos.
I'm reading Onward now.
Yeah. Oh, Onward now. Yeah. Yeah, it's really great. It's a great book, and the nice thing about it is it's not a daunting book to read. It's really easy to read. It's comfortable. It's conversational.
It's really a leadership book.
It is.
I think it's a great leadership
book. And it's a
book.
story. That's what's right. It's not just bullet-pointed, you know, tweet-worthy quotes. It's really the story of Starbucks and how they made it through the recession of the last few years, and it's really fascinating.
And it's important to me, too, because if you've read parts of the book or you're reading the book now, a big part of the section that I'm reading now talks about how Starbucks' problem a few years ago was that they essentially were growing too fast. You know, they're making a lot of money, they're expanding internationally, globally, but then they found themselves kind of struggling because as fast as they were growing, they were sacrificing things like their core values and the quality of service that they had, the experience that they wanted people to have when they visited their locations. And so it really makes you think about more things than the money. You know, as important as money and revenue is, Howard Schultz writes a lot about sticking to what you believe in and your core values and what you really want to do to make the world a better place. So that was a great first book for me. Okay, the second book I have, it's not new. It's called The Power of Intention by Dr. Wayne Dyer. I picked this up last year. Here, I'll go a little closer. Anyways, this is an illustrated copy, so it's really cool. Lots of illustrations through it, but anyways, basically The premise of the book is it gives you different ways to take control of your life, whether it has to do with your work, your relationships, your friendships, different goals that you have. It really outlines in a few nice ways specific tips for getting things done, and why you want to get things done, and why you have goals and dreams in life.
And living on purpose.
Living on purpose, right? Exactly. So doing things for a reason and doing them because you believe in them. So lots of great chapters. And what I like about this book is you can kind of jump around. So you can definitely read it from cover to cover. But what I've been enjoying doing lately is just picking a section that relates to a problem or a challenge that I've been facing that particular week, and just kind of diving into it and seeing what he has to say and how I can overcome that specific obstacle to come out a better person, better, stronger human being. So it's a great book for business and just your personal life in general. Kind of weird book, but
I think it's a great choice.
Okay, my third book is probably the weirdest. If you know me at all, I'm a Minnesota native. So,
and if you know him at all, you follow him on Twitter or Facebook. This was on the table of your Instagram photo. Yeah?
That's right. Yep, I'm reading this right now too. See if you can, maybe. Anyways, it's called Reflections from the North Country. So I'm from Minnesota. I spent a lot of my summers up near the Boundary Waters, spending time at my family's cabin. But anyways, this is a great book. It's by a native Minnesotan, Zigard F. Olson. He's since passed away, but he was considered extremely influential, like to the degree of the big greats in wilderness and spiritual writing like that. And so the reason why I like this book is because it's specifically focused on a few different areas. Some of the chapters hit on subjects such as intuition, harmony, awareness, aliveness, courage. And the reason why I like this book a lot is because, we're involved heavily in in the technology field, really. So anytime I can read a book that helps me improve in this area of my life and in all areas of my life, but reminds me of, times or memories where I wasn't so heavily focused in technology, it's kind of a nice way to just look back on life and look forward. And so the book is called Reflections from the North Country. It's a great book. It's a really quick read. I like it a lot.
Excellent. Thank you for those books. Yeah. You should know that I also had Onward on my list and took it off since it was being repeated here. So it's a really great book. If all three of us are recommending it, it's definitely a sign that you should go pick it up and take a look. My first book is going to be Putting the Public Back in Public Relations by Brian Solis. I think is how you pronounce it. I always get it wrong.
Solis. Yeah, that's right.
And it was written 2 years ago, so in the social media world that can kind of feel outdated. But what's great about this book, and especially about the way Brian writes, is that he brings it down to principles, right? Because he knows that the tools are always changing and that the specific skill sets might always be changing. But the first thing he writes is that marketing, PR, social media, all of that, it's all really sociology, right? It comes down to a social science more than it does just a basic set of tools that we use. And so it's really great to know, that people are still focused on that. He really, obviously, based on the title, says, your audience, your public is really who you need to be thinking about, not yourself, not your own product. You need to be thinking about what your audience wants, what they need, and what they're ultimately going to do in relation to your brand and your product. So it's a great book that I would recommend. It was written by Solis and co-authored by a woman named Deidre Breckenridge, who is also awesome on Twitter. So make sure to check that one out. Second book is going to be Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson. I got this book for Christmas and absolutely devoured it. And
I'm in the middle of that one also.
It's phenomenal.
I've got like 4 books stacked in my home office.
Yep.
Onward's one of them, and Steve Jobs is also.
There you go. Yeah.
What did you think?
I've kind of gotten to a point with my reading that with books that are strictly about business strategy and marketing, it just all kind of runs together, right? So I really appreciated reading these stories like Onward, like Steve Jobs, and it's great because for me, when I read those, there's kind of 1 or 2 takeaways that I really get from the book versus just this long list of things I need to do. And so for the Steve Jobs book, I really took away the power of intuition, especially in business and in your personal life. And what made Apple so wildly successful was that Steve made these business decisions that he just knew were going to work. He made them in 45 minutes to produce the iPad. I mean, something that was clearly going to cost the company millions upon millions of dollars. A huge risk financially, obviously, for the company. He said, This is so great. I don't need to do the market research. I know people want this. Let's do it. And then I think there's something very powerful to be said about that. And obviously, you have to be careful, but there's also a lot to be said about risk-taking and about following your intuition. And I think there's a way that you can build your intuition in a way that it can be trusted more so than maybe even market research. So that was a phenomenal book and my big takeaway. What's great about that book, too, is that I think other people will take away different things from it. I mean, it's 600 pages long, so there's a lot of content in there. And my third book, this is a fiction book, and I read this just a couple months ago, and it's called The Selected Works of T.S. Spivet. And this came out a few years ago, and it's about a young boy who is incredibly gifted, a savant, I guess you would say. And what he does is he just draws maps. This incredible map maker. He has notebooks all over his room full of maps of his hometown, full of train yards, full of, you know,
that he
sewage
illustrates?
systems. Yep, that he illustrates. And what's cool is that the book it's kind of bigger, and it has pictures scattered throughout the book of his maps. And it's about his journey to the Smithsonian Institute to accept an award that he got for his map making. And it was thought that the people giving him the award, they thought, you know, he was a professor at a university. And so they're amazed to see this little boy who's, you know, this just incredible, gifted drawer really come and accept it. It's kind of about his journey into adulthood and family, and really sparked my own creativity, especially in our job when we're doing, you know, seemingly repeated activities like tweeting, like blogging, like Facebook, you know, kind of doing the same things multiple times per week. You really have to get creative in how you do things. And so I think, you know, like I said before, there's a lot to be said about reading books that'll spark your creativity and get you thinking about things other than just social media and marketing. So those are my 3 picks.
I think the concept of reading fiction to spark creativity, I think, is valid. I think there's a lot of people who will read creativity books until they're blue in their face and never creative.
Right.
And then they'll have a personal experience, or maybe, you know, a fine creative spark in the oddest places. I think that people should still be reading magazines. Yeah. And not just magazines related to their business. You know, but I subscribe personally to like 15 magazines. And everything from, you know, from Men's Health. I need to be reading a little bit closer. Everything from Men's Health to Inc. magazine to, you know, my wife gets People, but I'm reading People magazine. But I'm also reading National Geographic, and I'm reading, you know, even my son's version of National Geographic. It's the children's version, but it's quite interesting, the information they share about animals and nature and the environment and things like this. So I think you'll find inspiration in a lot of different places, and fiction is no different. I think it's great. All right, great choices, guys.
All right, we want to hear what you're reading right now, so if you can, log on to our Facebook page, facebook.com/onesocialmedia, or you can send us a tweet. We're at onesocialmedia on Twitter, all one word, and we want to see what you're reading. Send us your titles, your authors, what you think other people could benefit from reading.
What are your picks?
The first quarter in 2012. So that is your homework for once this show's over, and we hope you join us next Wednesday, 3 p.m. Central Time for our live show.
Excellent. Bye, everyone.